like most people, you get attracted to people that you know.
Yep.
The thing that I guess I've found mistakes that I've made in the past is that you lead with that, where I guess if you look at the right person for the right job, really starts with what is the strategy, what is your structure, what systems have you going to put in place, and then what people then fit into those three categories.
Peter Matthews.
Jeff Moxham.
Welcome to the Moxham Mindset, mate.
Oh, I'm very pleased to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's very nice to have you here. We were saying just before we started recording, we've sort of almost grown up through the real estate industry together.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Similar age, started sort of selling real estate at a similar age as well. So thank you very much for your time. I know you're running around a lot today and tomorrow and really every day.
Every day.
In your role, which I'm really keen to ask you a few questions and share with the listeners. I think you've got a fascinating story from a humble real estate agent of 19 in, what suburb was it?
Bankstown.
Yeah,
Bankstown.
Yes. So starting from Bankstown to where you are today. So for the listeners, could you give us a quick snapshot of your career from sort of there today in terms of the roles and leading into Realtair where you are today, which we'll talk a bit about?
Yeah, terrific. Bankstown was a marketplace. I was actually working at Ray White Corporate before then. I was 18. And the powers that be there decided that it was time for me to get into sales. So they gave me a choice of either Wagga or Bankstown. And a boy from Epping, both of those were outside of my comfort zone. But Bankstown was great because it was a highly multicultural marketplace. And the idea there really from, I guess, the company perspective was that if I could sort of learn to understand and deal with a range of different cultures, that'd be great for my career moving forward. And I'm eternally grateful for that because it wasn't something that I would have naturally chosen, a marketplace like that to go to, but it was brilliant. I had a terrific time and I just did all the things I was told to do. So I ended up having some pretty good success there. And
that's awesome. Getting out of your comfort zone early, that's got to be a good thing.
Yeah, and look, I have to admit, it was one of those things. Tony Fountain, it was who really sort of pushed me in that direction. Tony was an auction mentor of mine as well. And he said, look, the best thing for you to do in consideration of this decision is really just to go out to the park. And so I went to Centennial Park and I wandered around and out in the free air and the open space and I made the decision that I'd do that. And I'm so grateful that that he pushed me in that direction, but so grateful that I had the opportunity in the first place. I then went into the Balmain marketplace and I sold there for a couple of years and then I had the opportunity to go back into a corporate role, except I went into a training role. So I was back in those days, you were called an associate. So at 22, I think I was back then, I was dealing with salespeople, principals, doing recruitment, working with businesses with growth and development. And I did that for probably about 5 years. And then an opportunity came up to go to New Zealand with Ray White. So I spent a couple of years there with my wife and I living in Auckland, which was,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was terrific because have some experience outside of the Sydney and New South Wales and Australian market to see what it was like operating in another country was really terrific. But then since then, I've had a couple of franchises in between that. So in the Eastwood market, the Epping market, and then probably my most recent one was in the lower North Shore of Sydney. So that was in Neutral Bay, Mossman and Crow's Nest.
Very successful office.
Yeah, and that was successful before I got there. Great business partners in Kingsley Yates and Shane Slater, Danny Grant. We managed to grow that business. In fact, it was one office and we expanded to 3 and we grew our team and we had a fairly sizable rent roll. But that was actually how Realtair started. We're looking at ways that we could find greater efficiencies and a little bit more flexibility with the recruitment of our workforce, because when we opened up each office, we found that we just replicated everything, which was pretty crazy. Given you, as you know, you can chuck a tennis ball pretty much to Mossman from Neutral Bay. So that's where Realtair was born, and then we ended up selling the business to the agency, and that was a pivotal moment.
The real estate business?
The real estate business,
Yep.
And we then sort of put all our effort and energy and funds into Realtair.
Yes, and tell us a little bit about Realtair.
Yeah, so Realtair is a tech business.
Yes.
It seems I feel a bit weird because I'm an agent.
Yes.
I've been an agent for 32 years. I've been calling auctions for 29 years, and I've done just near 27,000 auctions. So
wow,
I'm an agent and an auctioneer, and but I also carry the title of CEO of a tech company.
yes,
But that all came about as we had a problem. We
yes.
just didn't know how to solve it, and we looked at technology to help assist solving that problem.
Was there a vision for it to be what it is today, or was it more, as you said, something that you wanted for yourselves to run a more efficient real estate business?
Yeah, well, it started, truthfully, if I said, look, we had this grand vision to be a global tech company providing services to the real estate industry, it wouldn't be true. We started it just simply because we had a problem. And, in summary for listeners, Realtair is effectively a prospecting through to settlement tech platform that takes all of the things that you would normally do in the prospecting space through to settlement that are done within an office or done by an agent or done by resources, and we've turned that into technology so that you can get a lot of time back, get a lot more efficiency. Since we've started that journey, it's evolved into a much bigger platform than what I ever expected.
Yeah, and tell us a little bit about that, about its size and your partners.
Yeah, so we've got about 180 staff now. We serve about 10,000 customers in Australia. We've got some really strong interest in New Zealand, and we've been building the back end system to make that possible for New Zealand, because there's a few subtle differences, but enough that we've had to kind of make some changes to the tech to launch there appropriately. And we're also in 3 weeks' time heading to the US. We've had a little bit of interest in the US as well, which has been terrific. But all this has come about really because we've had some strong growth and really good support from the industry in Australia.
Any big moments in that journey of risk for you? Any moments where you've gone walking down the hallways at night going, how am I going to make this work? And, like putting it all on the line? Like what's the personal journey been?
I think anyone that's in a startup would understand absolutely that you think at the beginning that you've got it all worked out. We just need to do this.
Yeah.
And it'll only cost us X amount to do that.
Yeah.
What you realise is that when you get to there's the this plus that plus that plus that. And then you get customers, of course, and then they say, well, it'd also be good if it could do this and if. And I guess still today I have those moments, but at the time that we, in the tech world, they call it bootstrapping, where you bootstrap the whole thing yourself, which was all the proceeds from the real estate business, and even to a point where I had to redraw on my mortgages to be able to continue to fund it. They're the moments that you sort of think to yourself, one, you've got confidence in what you're doing, but then you've always got that the devil and the angel on either side of your shoulder, and the devil's going, "Are you really thinking this is the right thing?"
Well,
but you've got to do it, don't you?
You've got to do it. I think any majorly successful person that has, there's always been one or two or many big steps. I've taken some myself, and it's interesting, isn't it? Once you take one and it's sort of, that was sort of okay. That was actually, or turned out all right. I think I'll dip the toe in a little bit more. And for my journey, it's just been a little bit more risk to now, fully owned, funded business. And 8 years ago, never thought I would have been here today. But so I think, I think it's a great journey to share with the listeners, because it's having a go, and to get big things and to make big advancements, you've got to make big moves. Yeah. Can I ask you, you've run multiple businesses in real estate and now CEO of a large organisation. What have you learnt about managing people, and what's your flavour? Like, what do you think works for you? And you've got a big team now, you're CEO, and it seems you've always been in leadership type roles in the corporate and etc. So you've obviously got a flair for that. What works for you, do you think? It's
a good question. I'm not sure if there's a definitive answer.
Yeah.
Because I haven't been formally trained. I've been involved in businesses, and I guess what I've been really lucky to have is people who have been prepared to mentor me, and also people who have been in a position where I can learn from. And, I guess that has shaped who I am today. But ultimately too, I think when in each step that I've taken, whether it's been in a management role or running my own business, or like I am today where I'm running a business that's, not really in my sweet spot when it comes to agency, albeit that it is, quite importantly attached to it. I think the critical thing really is with people and with leadership is recruiting the right people. Your leadership, I think probably starts with that, but also at the same time too is being out just making decisions and making decisions about people and their futures. But also making decisions. I think probably the procrastination part of good leadership that doesn't exist. Make a decision, move on from that, and don't look back. And that's probably been something that I've taken on board. And I also would say, I remember Brian White used to say this, I'm sure he still does today, where he talks about, in the absence of leadership prevails. So if I'm sort of given the title of leadership and I don't lead, then somebody else will. And that's where you've really got to just take the bull by the horns, and you've got to make sure that you're very clear on your structure and everything else that comes with it.
Recruitment, just such a massive part of growing a business, and as you've just noted, it's so important, and it's not easy. Recruitment, I find, and recruiting the right people. And do you have a particular, process? How many times do you like to meet with people? Do you meet with them for a long time? Do you get recruiters involved? Do you have a favoured process for your key hires? How much time, how many times do you meet with them?
Yeah, I don't know that I've got a clear formula. I'd say the thing about recruitment, particularly with a company that's stage as ours is, you've got to empower your managers to be able to make those recruitment decisions themselves, and also ensure that those same recruitment decisions that they make and the empowerment that they have for that, they've got the same level of confidence and authority to be able to make the reverse of those, and that's to free up somebody's career. For key hires that are part of either my management team or our exco, it's very much like most people, you get attracted to people that you know. The thing that I guess I've found mistakes that I've made in the past is that you lead with that, where I guess if you look at the right person for the right job, really starts with what is the strategy, what is your structure, what systems have you going to put in place, and then what people then fit into those three categories, rather than, which I've made the mistake in the past where I say, I've got this person, I've got to find this role for them. Well, I've always found that being problematic because there's no clarity around what role that person will actually play in the growth of the company. And it's trying to put a square peg in a round hole. So people kind of come after your strategy, your structure, your systems. And then it's the right people. So the right seat on that bus.
What's your meeting schedule with your leadership team? How do you interact? Do you guys meet daily, weekly? We have 2 scheduled exco meetings a week. When I say exco, so that's our CTO, CFO, and COO. So we talk, but we would talk 2 to 3 times a day, I would think, on different things, but formal catch-ups. The thing about those, we always have an agenda. The agenda, can vary, but we've got standing items. We're getting better at that. But we also have engaged with a business coach as well. I've never had one of those before. I'm a big fan of coaching.
It's very, very much one of those things that I always thought, why do I need somebody to kind of tell me what to do? And I'm very clear on what I want to do and what I want to achieve and when I want to do a buy and all the rest of it. And my exco actually kind of foisted this upon me. And we went and met this particular coach, and we just got on really well. And then once we started the process of talking about what it is that is important, he said to me, he said, can you outline to me what your strategy is? And I embarrassingly had to sit there and go, well, I know what I need to do. I know where I need to go, but I really can't articulate what my strategy is.
Isn't that a powerful question? And isn't it a big moment when you really
huge.
have to think about it?
It is.
And how powerful is it when you just, the clearer the vision, the more powerful it is? And I talk to my team about this, and we do some training in this regard. And it's a real, for people, when you haven't been asked that question before, it's just a real eye-opening moment. And I find, and I'm seeing in my team, they're all getting really clear on their vision, both personally and work, and it's just like it evolves, doesn't it?
It does, yeah, and it provides clarity.
Yeah,
because it gives you that. I guess you really understand what your sense of purpose is, whether you're in a leadership position like I am, or somebody's in a management role, or they're in whatever sort of role it might be. It could be a product or development role, whatever it might be.
Yeah,
you understand what your purpose is, and I think the thing about that too is that one thing I've also had to learn is I've always worked in environments where I can just come up and have a chat to you at your desk.
Yes,
we don't operate that way.
Yeah,
we've got.
That's big.
We're everywhere.
Yeah.
We don't even have. We've got one kind of central location, which is what was the Real Estate Academy, now the Realtair Academy up in Gosford. So we've got a team there, but then outside of that, we're in shared office space around the country in Adelaide, Melbourne, Sydney, Queensland.
Yes,
and also that we've actually given up our premises in the Philippines.
Ah.
So we've got an incorporated business over there. We've got 110 employees. We now actually operate in a shared office space in a range of different locations, which is kind of, it's been really good for us because it means that, travel-wise, it's made a lot easier, and the facilities in those locations are appropriate for what we need.
Yes.
But we've had to really adjust our communication cadence, because we don't get to you don't have the osmosis or the quick chats. So you've got to be much more formalised with your management. You've got to be more formalised with your communication, and that obviously has an impact on your leadership style too, which has had to change.
Do you think the coaching has had an impact down to through the leadership team to the employees?
I would say that it will. I'd say the only reason it hasn't now is because it's only fairly new for us.
Yes.
But the thing that it's done for me personally is that I had this, very. I wasn't very confident about the fact that it would have any impact at all, and it just took the very first question for me to realise what I don't know, and I loved that, because I sort of sat there and just went, if this is the first question, I imagine what it's going to be like when we're further down the track.
Yeah.
There's going to be so much more I will learn. And I've been really lucky, Jeff, to work with some great people and in a range of different roles within the real estate industry. But I'm in uncharted territory. Like, I'm not a tech person at all.
Fantastic.
So it's good to have people ask those questions, because it gives you just very, gives you clarity on what you need to school yourself up on. Really.
It's growth, just growing and learning, and it's just a great thing, isn't it? What do you think the future holds for technology in real estate, mate?
Yes, that's again a question. Look, I've got a very clear view in my mind as to where that's going to be.
What's your view? And what's your view? What's needed? And
I look at, and this is kind of a little bit of Realtair, but also putting my REI hat on.
Yes.
And I say that 32 years ago when I got in the industry, I remember that there was a survey about where agents stood on the ethics ladder. Yes. And I can't remember whether we were second from the bottom or third from the bottom, but today we're still third from the bottom. And, you would know as I do, and as your listeners would too, if they're agents, the amount of value that we do provide to the community. And whilst, there are, like there is in every industry, there are elements that I guess tarnish the industry.
Yep.
The majority of people, 99% of people, don't go out to deliberately do the wrong thing.
Yep.
And we get tarred with that brush. And it's kind of been reputationally, we haven't really seen any shift.
Yep.
And I think the major reason for that is because, when we have a one-to-one relationships, and when we're property manager to landlord, sales agent to vendor, there's nothing better. There's years, as you would know, that it takes to build that relationship and build that trust for that owner to hand over what is possibly their most valuable asset and say, it's in your hands to, extract the best value. But when it comes to one-to-many in dealing with tenants and buyers, that's where our problems are, because it's that relationship where we're so invested in this one-to-one that we just don't take as good care of the one-to-many as we should. And a lot of that is linked to the fact that we've had an inconsistent way of doing business. And if you take the sales transactional environment as a great example, as being an auctioneer and you've done loads of auctions yourself, you've got a clear set of rules with which the auction is to be conducted. So the seller knows what they've got to do, the agent knows what they've got to do, the auctioneer knows what they've got to do, and the buyer has got a set of rules in which they have to perform in order to participate in the process. And 82% of transactions, not unfortunately, but just factually, are done by private treaty, which is outside of those rules of engagement of auction. And if you went to the best real estate business in the country, you spoke to the 5 best agents and you put them in separate rooms and you said, look, tell me, what do I have to do to buy a house off you by private treaty? I guarantee you get 5 different answers. And we wonder then why it is that consumers are confused.
And
because they're getting different perspectives. And that none of those 5 responses are right or wrong, but there's no clarity in the way in which we engage. So to answer your question in a very long way, how does technology, where do I see it going? I see that technology will play a role in improving the relationship between agents and consumers. And what it will do is that there is now the opportunity with tech that exists today, it's just that it requires greater adoption, where transactional management is done in a technology platform. Where you're able to deal with offers, you're able to manage auctions, and you're able to manage the receipt of funds and the exchange of contracts in a consistent, reliable, transparent, and probably most importantly to not just the regulator but also the consumer, an auditable process. And I think that once technology gets to that point where that becomes commonplace, I think that what we'll see is a greater level of trust, particularly from buyers in agents around that transactional experience, because that's where it all falls down. So that's the role that I see technology playing, and I'm very privileged to be able to participate in that because I've seen that as a problem for a long time.
I totally agree with you, and I think there's still a long way to go. I particularly think one thing, like obviously I've got a commercial business, started in residential, and one thing I said to Dan White when we started our partnership, I said, it's a great opportunity for me to resify a commercial business. I think commercial is still so far in the dark ages when it comes to technology. The good residential agents, I think, and businesses are a great example of really forward-thinking, entrepreneurial thinking, self-improvement, just going the extra mile, whereas commercial's still, a little bit sort of stuck in the 80s, I still feel. And that's I've got, lots of plans and thoughts in that space, but I think I'm fascinated by the whole technology space. I think there's just huge amounts of inroads there for commercial.
There is.
And
so much. And you're right about the resi side. It's not that resi is any wiser on tech than say the commercial side, but what it is just by sheer numbers. And that entrepreneurial.
It's
position.
The hunger. There's more hunger. I think
they ask for more.
And it's you grow up sort of street fighting for listings, very competitive on a low salary, and it's a difference. It's a difference. As I mentioned before, your small sort of side role as the president of the New South Wales Real Estate Institute, and I have to say congratulations again on this role. When I heard about that, you've been in this role for a little while now, but knowing you for as long as I have, I was really excited for you. I think you're the perfect guy for that sort of role. Can you tell us a little bit about your role, and also what are the big items for you and for the Real Estate Institute today?
So the role of president, I've been involved in the REI for a number of years, and I've always enjoyed that because one, you get to socialise with people that are like-minded and have got a strong interest in adding value to the industry. And I guess there's probably no better position to do that from than that of president. So I had some big shoes to fill in Leanne Pilkington, who served 2 terms because of COVID, a bit of a COVID anomaly. So I've been a really proud member of the board for a number of years. I'm humbled to be president. But I guess the thing is, I look at it and I think being the president is to be able to represent the industry, not just from an industry standpoint, but also from a lobbying standpoint. There's a lot of things. I'm sure that you and I would agree on many of the things that you look at from a legislative perspective around both commercial and residential real estate that just you scratch your head and think, why does it work that way? So we do spend a lot of time, and I spend a lot of time invested personally in understanding why things are the way they are from a legislative perspective, and working with government and bureaucrats to be able to, put some common sense into some of these things. So that's part of it. The other
how much of your time, your sort of weekly calendar, is REI versus, I'm just curious.
Yeah, it's probably it is probably 20 to sort of 25%.
Yep.
And that can vary from week to week.
Yep.
I mean, it's a much bigger commitment than I thought it was going to be, to be honest.
Yeah, of course.
Leanne did a great job of making it look a lot easier than what it was.
Yes.
And I look at it today and think, look, I've got so much going on in my own business life, also in my personal life, and then to add this on top of all this as well has been a challenge. But it's like anything, Jeff, as you know that. You want to get something done, you give it to the busiest people.
Yes.
But I must admit, I did get a PA, so that's made a world of difference to my life.
Yes.
As well as my time management.
Yeah,
so
brilliant.
I'm making it work.
Good on you. So what are the big items that you see that you're passionate about and that the REI New South Wales are working on?
Yeah. So you get to define a couple of things as a president that you stand for.
Yep.
And the things that I've communicated to the membership and to the industry abroad has been three key things. Number one has been about what we were talking about earlier about transparency transactionally. That we need as an industry to move. Doesn't matter which tech platform, but we need to move to a consistent transactional environment so that we can move genuinely from the bottom of the ethics lists further up the line where we should be.
Yep.
Just simply because we've got a process that is clear and auditable and becomes trustworthy. And at the moment, that's just not the case.
Yep.
As I mentioned earlier. The other part of it is around membership. Now we're a traditional institute. We've got lots of tradition, which is great. However, part of the big issue that I see is that we've got a membership structure that is an entity-based structure.
Yes.
And I've always been puzzled by this because you say, well, I'm a member, but you're not a member. The company's a member. Now, we do have individual membership, so you can become an individual member, but only if your entity is a member. And, people in the real estate business, as you would know, like we've all moved around from one place to the next. So it may be that you've got a deep passion from a membership perspective to contribute to the industry, and then all of a sudden you are unable to be a member because the business that you work for has chosen not to be one. And I think that when you look at all the major membership organisations, they all have individual membership. We're individually licensed. Now there's that I guess the licensing kind of side of it, but the most important part of it, I think, from an educational perspective, is that we rely on principals. So the entity, which is largely represented by the principal, cascading down the things that we need to communicate from an industry standpoint, where really that should be direct to the person who's dealing with a customer. So it's kind of like there's a middle ground, and I don't think there's too many people that would dispute the fact that really it might have made sense early. It doesn't make as much sense now. So we've got a big drive to work on a structure that there's, we have more members come into the REI because we've got people that might sit as a member, as an entity, but then you've got individuals within that company that are not members personally. So that's a big drive for that. We improve communication. On top of that too, which I think is even critically important in going back to the lobbying side of it, is that we understand exactly what the members' views are by communicating with the members directly, understanding what do you think about this. More importantly, is that our whole industry is not about property, it's about relationships. So our members have relationships with their communities, whether it's landlords, tenants, buyers, sellers, and there's a lot of things that we can influence from a legislative perspective, and we can lobby government to get change if we know what it is that our consumers, our customers think about some of those issues. So being able to communicate via a member who then can, say as an example, pass on a survey to their customers, we can then aggregate the responses of that, and then we can actually go to government and say, listen, do you really want to go and do this? Take the rent freeze argument that's up at the moment. I mean, from an industry perspective, no one says that makes sense. If you spoke to a landlord, no one would say that makes sense. If you spoke to a tenant, they probably would say, look, that makes sense, until you actually break it all down and say, well, it's going to impact supply, which means that that's going to impact tenancy.
Yes.
So it's understanding exactly what the consumers think, and I think we've got a much stronger way of being able to do that and represent the industry and our members better if we've got a direct line of communication to individual members.
I think it's a great organisation. My father was on the board of the REI for many years back in Parramatta days, so it's so good on you. And I know it's a lot of work, and I think it's a great industry, and I've always enjoyed being a member. I'm going to ask you a question about goals. You're obviously a very driven man. You're very successful. Do you set yourself, so two questions, personal and business. For personal, do you set yourself goals, and do you have a process for staying on the line of goals, or are you more just up and at 'em and these are all the things that I'm going to achieve? How does it work for you?
I'm glad that you gave me the alternative, because I'm the latter.
Yeah, I think a lot of us are.
Yeah, like when you do, you talk to people who clearly articulate this goal sort of identification and then process of achieving and all those sort of things. I don't think that I'm really built that way.
Yep.
When it comes to, I guess, the business side, when you're looking at creating a business plan, and then you're talking about forecasts and things like that sit behind it, and the strategy and the people and the structure and everything I mentioned before, and the systems, I'm with that all the way. But when it comes to, I guess, setting goals, is it like most people, you've got ambition, and some of that ambition is becomes closer to reality based on the activities that you just do each day.
Yes.
So I'm not a big one where I'll sort of say, well, look, by this time I want to be doing this.
I mean, you're doing what you love every day, which is great, and we're blessed to be able to do that. And so you're driven by doing what you love, and it just
I just kind of figure from my end, whether it's on the REI side or it's on the Realtair side, if you're doing something that's to solve a problem for someone, well, then that's valuable.
Yeah, totally.
But it's like, I had a lot of, particularly in the tech space, right? A lot of people kind of go, oh, we've got this great new thing. And you go, yeah, but what problem are you trying to solve? And I guess I look at the way that we've, in 32 years of being in the industry, you look at different things and you say, well, look, there's a problem to solve. But even better, you then get feedback from customers. You then say, oh, well, look, it'd be good if. And it's that good if that then if you can convert that into a solution that solves a problem, that whether it solves time or creates transparency or whatever the issue might be, like that's what I love.
Yes.
And you hit the nail on the head before. Like we're lucky we're doing what we love, and we are lucky because there's a lot of people who have jobs. Like you and I both are the same. I don't really have a job.
Yeah.
I've just got a career that I love.
Yeah. Do you have a morning routine?
I do a couple of times a week. So I swim Wednesdays and Fridays. So I need that not just for my physical health, but more my mental health.
Yes. Have you always been into exercise? Has that been an outlet for you for your?
Yeah, it has been,
life?
but it's never been for any personal goal or objective.
Yeah.
Like the thing about ocean swimming that I enjoy is that it's not like a pool where it can get a little bit boring.
Yes.
But even in a pool, you do get lost in your own thoughts.
Yep.
In the ocean, I love it because I can be looking at the bottom. I might not even be able to see the bottom.
Yep.
Then the next day, I might see a stingray or a cuttlefish or a shark, which I've seen before, which, at the time I don't really enjoy that. But but it's more the fact that, you're in your own thoughts. And the best thinking I've ever done is when I'm in the water.
I had a motorcycle accident many years ago in 2003, and through school, I was very sporty, always been a big part of my life. But swimming was one thing that I just didn't like it, boring, didn't do it. I think it was my fast moving mind. It was too challenging doing the same thing for too long. After the motorcycle accident, I had to do a lot of swimming, and I've done it ever since because it's like when I mow the lawn, I have great thought bubbles when I'm swimming and mowing the lawn. But swimming is that hypnotic sort of it's just it's a thing. I hear you with that.
Well, wait till you do the ocean swimming side of it. The great
Yeah.
thing about that is that it's not like a pool where you kind of have to count your laps and you're measured by each touch.
Yes.
It's ocean swimming thing I love about that. It's about the destination.
Yeah.
So you're heading in that direction. So
Yeah.
I've popped up my head and gone, oh, I'm here.
Yes.
'Cause I've
Speaking
been
of
so deep in thought.
Speaking of destinations, and we're talking about visions and goals. Do you have in your mind are you going towards a big destination in what you're doing like every day with Realtair? Like is it like, you NZ and going to the States, we want to be, the biggest in the world. Is there a big vision that you're sort of moving towards every day?
Yeah, it is. Look, I think that stems from what I was saying earlier, which is kind of tied in with my REI hat as well, where
it's a great fit, isn't it? Like they're harmonious.
They are, because to me, I think the greatest contribution that we could make to the industry is to improve the relationship between consumers and agents.
Yep.
And as I said, not in the one-to-one. I mean, obviously we can have an impact with that, but really in that massive, canyon between buyers and sellers and tenants and landlords. And we're very much in the sales transaction space. So that's when I always talk about transactional management.
Yeah.
Because I do see that would be the greatest thing that I could do for the industry,
awesome.
is contribute to that.
It's all about contribution, isn't it? And I think I've become very interested in this as I've got older, and we're both the same before. We're both of the similar vintage, and it's all about contribution. That's what makes me tick, and it's sort of the next phase in life for me. And I say, and look, talking about goals and visions, I've become very interested in the whole science of success and goals and entrepreneur, and hence this podcast, which I really enjoy. Your big vision of you're just naturally heading towards where you're heading to with Realtair, and your harmonious, really, it's actually a scientific thing of great success is your daily roles being harmonious with each other towards the bigger vision. So it's just a natural thing that some people do and some people don't.
Yeah.
Redecisions. Obviously, you're in a big role as a CEO. You've always been in leadership roles. Has making good, swift decisions and not looking back always come naturally to you, or is it something that you've learnt more about as you've grown into the roles you are in today?
I think it's probably something that I never was conscious of. I observed that and learned from that from some great people that I've worked with and seen. And I used to marvel at some where I'd have some direct reports who would just know what to do. And I used to think, I wonder how they know what to do. And the thing about it is I think you evolve with that, and I've evolved with that to a point. I've had the the luxury and the privilege of working with some great people, and you learn from them, and you take a little bit from everyone.
Yep.
And one of those things, I guess, in about making decisions is around confidence, and probably I've got to a point now where I feel very clear about what I want to achieve, and anything that I need to make a decision about in order to get towards that objective, I'll make that decision on. In fact, probably my exco team would say, maybe not to me, but would say that I maybe am a little bit too hasty in some ways. And I think probably, you just get so enthusiastic about it. You also get the ability to be able to make those decisions, but you also then can't take that for granted either. And that's the thing I guess I've learnt in the position that I'm in now, is that I've got great people in key roles.
Yes.
Who also have got an opinion about where we should go in order to achieve that objective. And I think that comes back to that recruitment discussion we had earlier about, I'm very fortunate to have the right people in the right seats, doing the right roles. And collectively as an executive group, like I find today, my decision making is different to what it was a year ago because of the influence that I have from that team.
Yeah, fantastic. It's all about that sort of, surrounding yourself with those right people. I mean, I'm my own business, but I am big on having coaches and mentors and all sorts of people around me to make those decisions. It's so important. If you're looking back on your career, would you have a moment that sort of stuck out as your most sort of teachable moment, a moment that you've sort of learnt most from in growing, in where you are today, and particularly maybe with Realtair, growing it to the great success that it is? Like, it's a great story, man. Like, really, to do what you've done, it's...
Yeah, I appreciate that. I feel like we've got a long way to go.
That's what the same. All successful people will say the same thing.
Yeah, and it's I'm really humbled by those comments, because look, when I do look back, you've got to say, well, look, yeah, okay, it's great that we are where we're at, and I have to remember the tough times of getting to where we are today. But I also look ahead and think, well, that's a really long, tough journey to get to where we need to be.
Yep.
But at the same time too, whether and whether that's sort of with a vision of saying, well, let's, it's geographic expansion. The thing that I'm always very focused on is that our position in market today is only as good as our evolution of and innovation of our current product set. Because the one thing I've learned about tech is that if you ever accept that you're done and you've achieved what you need to achieve, well, that's it.
You're in the wrong game.
Pack up, you're out. So
fast moving.
It is, and you've got to. It's about consistent innovation, and I think the Japanese have a phrase called Kaizen, incremental improvement. We talk about that with our team all the time. Little bit, and it's a big chunk at the end of the quarter. But I guess I look at defining moments, and probably that there was, when it comes to what I'm doing now, which I never, sort of 10 years ago had a vision of doing, really came about because I had a problem and I didn't know how to solve it.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was actually more in the property management space than it was here. And we were using a piece of tech, and I thought, surely I can get everything I need from that.
Yeah.
But when I went to get it, because I've never practiced as a property manager, I've just owned it. When I went to get it, I couldn't find it.
Yeah.
And I just was stunned.
Yeah.
And I thought, how is that the case? So that was just one of those things where I just went, well, then actually I can't define what we need to do in sales either. So why don't we start to document what we do? And it went from documenting to let's now build a better process around that. Went from building a better process to saying let's start to put some little bit of tech in there. Then we ended up building a little bit of tech, and it was like a bit of a movie set, to be honest, where it was the front was tech, but that it was all people in the background that were doing all the work. To now today, where it's it's a fully automated and fully operational tech platform. But that was taking 267 steps from prospecting through to settlement to put into now a tech program that relates to 3 primary products, Realtair, pitch, sign, sell, and then that gets all encompassed with a whole range of things that make all those products work and work well together.
Awesome. I'm forever thinking about all of the steps, and I'm not there yet, but I have in my mind what I want for the commercial business, and it's a big long list of, at the moment, pretty big Excel spreadsheets which we're in the process of trying to change.
Yeah.
So Pete, my dad's got a number of sayings that my sister and I have coined them moxisms. A lot of them are real estate related. Do you have any moxisms?
Oh, look, I'm a big fan of quotes and things like that, and there's some that stick with you.
Yes.
And that you find yourself talking about and sharing with others.
Yes.
I remember probably one of the first ones, which taught me a big lesson because it was a principle that I was in partnership with, and the quote that came out was, "If it is to be, it is up to me," and that's okay to a point. It just means that you have no interest in delegating. You've got no trust in people, and it's only going to be because of you. And the thing that I've learned about that is that that is true for a small business, but not a big one.
Yes.
There's no leap from there if you live by that philosophy.
It's the biggest challenge, I think, for most business owners, in particular real estate agents that are just good sellers, to make that leap. And that's what I love about your journey, that you've obviously made that leap, and it is that delegation thing. It's a hard thing for a lot of successful people. So thank you for coming onto the Moxon Mindset.
Thanks for having me.
I appreciate your time, mate. And I'll let you go back to your busy schedule.
Thank you so much. I've enjoyed it.
Thanks, you, mate.
Jeff.